And so we had this aha of like, we want to create a business, and I say this is our leadership team. We want to create a business where people are truly being leveraged and amplified when they join us, and that people aren't working just to work, they need to make money.
So many of you guys know who've been listening for a while that the podcast used to be called Marketing in Other Markets because we always tried to interview an agent from another area. And a couple of weeks ago, our last guest connected me with a friend of hers who's an agent in New Hampshire, and I've never spoken to a realtor in New Hampshire. So I'm really excited today to have Hvizda on the show. She's a top producing agent team leader in New Hampshire, and they are selling all kinds of unique and crazy properties, but also they're doing it in their own way. And she's really built her business to fit what she was looking for in life, which I have a high level of respect for because my wife and I are doing very much a version of that on our own. So Ryan, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
So we always start the same way because we like to have a little bit of order here. Why don't you walk us through how long you've been in the business and kind of where you are today?
Okay, so I've been licensed for just over 10 years, and I got dragged into the business by my husband. He got in first, and I was at the time an art teacher and a farmer, and I knew nothing about money. I knew nothing about really building a business. And when he got into real estate, I thought it was just like sales in a very stereotypical negative way. But then there's this, my background's in permaculture, and there's this concept there, permaculture is everywhere. And this is like, how can we make a better world? And when I realized that real estate is land and improvements, and the built environment and how we engage in the environment is like real estate covers all of that, I was like, whoa, I think this could be a platform for me to realize all the idealism, dreams that I've had, and actually have an income and be able to give back at a high level. So once I made that fusion of like a concept, then I was like all in, like, how can I take all of my interests and funnel it through this business? So in the beginning, that really was through farm properties. So we were doing info sessions that were helping people understand how thought we were helping first-time farm buyers, but we ended up really getting into this idea of stewardship, and there were a lot of retiring either homesteaders or farmers that were looking for like-minded people to take over their property. So that's kind of like the first way we got in, and then it was like, well, my first time buying a home wasn't a great experience. How can I help empower first-time home buyers? And then it was like, then I started getting into real estate investing. It's like, how can I help people make better decisions on their first purchase that sets them up for wealth building? So it was like everywhere where I had an interest, I then kind of helped build that part of the business through education and kind of being a thought leader in the concept.
I love that. And I feel like we need to back up a little bit because what you just said is so important. And I think agents, even who have been in the business for a really long time, might need to go back and reflect on like, what were your original interests and things that you were into and communities that you were part of before you got into real estate? And are you still serving those goals and those groups? And if not, how could you do that? I mean, I firmly believe that like whatever you're passionate about, there is some tie-in to the real estate industry because like shelter is one of our basic needs as a human being. And no matter what you're into, like there's some way to tie it in. You kind of have to take a step back and think, am I still serving that original goal? And am I still curious and intrigued by what I do every day? Because I can tell that like you're excited about real estate, not just because you want to go show another house, which is where many agents get burnt out really quickly, but because your interests that you had all along really do support and tie into what you do for a living. And so I feel like I would really tell everyone, like, take a step back and think about that. Or if you're a new agent, think, when I got into this business, did I give up all of my other interests and stop thinking about them? Because I think that's a big mistake.
So I think the same way. And so it went from like my interests and how the business I would get would be from my interests. But then when I started creating something outside of myself, I was like, this is a platform for anybody that joins us to fuel their own interests and build their real estate business authentically around their purpose or passion. So for example, like I coached Chris, who's been on our team now 7 years, but he was a transplant from Ohio and he loves the Browns. So he started the Browns backer of Central New Hampshire, and now he's got this network that he didn't have before, where they'll go to a Patriots Browns game and they do fantasy football and they watch the games together at the local bar. And all of a sudden he tapped into a network around his passion. And he did the same thing with soccer. So now it's more about coaching agents on my team. What's your passion and how can you authentically show up time over time to then build relationships with people that then want to transact with you? So another person on our team, she's really passionate about gardening. So now she's running the gardening for a local art school, and then she's on a board of she wants to help the senior population. So she joined a board that serves the senior population, and she does a lot of gardening seminars for them. So she's like authentically tapping into her passion and then going out in the community and building relationships around that.
Well, and I mean, I feel like it should be no surprise that the agents who are still genuinely excited about the business are the ones who've introduced their passions into it. I mean, like for me, like I just hosted 120 realtors to come play pickleball with me for the day. We think it's the world's biggest real estate specific pickleball tournament. And like for me, I was just like, how do I want to spend next Friday at work? I want to play pickleball all day and hang out with my friends. And so we raised a lot of money for charity at the same time. But like again, like this is why I love my job and why my business is up over last year. And I think everyone needs to think like, what what's missing? Like, how can you bring excitement back in your business? Because there is so much negativity in our industry right now. I mean, you can barely turn on the news without hearing something negative about real estate or home prices or something. And I think really the number one job of an agent is to get excitement back in the minds of your customers, right? Like when you're watching, $1 million Listing or whatever the completely made up real estate shows on Netflix of the day, those agents are at least getting their clients excited. They're getting people interested in real estate, and that's oftentimes the goal here. But Ryan, like you did something special. You are one of few agents whose business was up this year over last year. And I want to talk about that for a second. Like I want you to walk us through your numbers because I think less than like 0.5% of agents out there right now, or probably sales professionals in the realm of real estate, are doing better in 24 than they were in 23 or 23 than 22. So walk us through where your business was and where it is now and kind of like what changed.
I think the biggest thing that changed was we saw the lawsuit and the chatter about buyer agency commission happening about a year and a half ago. So for most of last year, setting the tone with the team of you will need to have conversations with your buyers to compensate you. And we were practicing that all at the end of last year. And starting in January, every buyer that we signed agreed to a commission that wasn't just what the MLS was offering. So our buyers agents, everybody doing buyers, is actually making more than they were when they were just letting the MLS dictate their commission. So that was one thing, which I think is just kind of hilarious because everybody's freaking out about that. But our agents are making more because of this lawsuit. And then the other thing was getting really specific about price point. We had a lot of agents last year do a lot of units, but they were at a lower price point. And so we got a little bit more clear of like, hey, not that we don't want to work at a lower price point, but let's prioritize your time toward the volume versus units. And prior we used to be like, you got to do 24 units, and somebody would just be so busy with units, but they weren't actually looking about their net income. So we got really clear around their 30, 60-day net GCI and making sure they were constantly in line with building a pipeline that was getting them what they wanted for an income.
Well, I love it. And so I think we have to like expound on that a little bit more though, because like most agents aren't in the business of turning down business. And it doesn't sound like you guys are turning away business, but what it sounds like is that you're specifically telling them how to spend their time and what activities to put their effort into so that at least their effort is going after the business they want. So walk us through what that looks like. What are some of those activities? What advice have you given them to increase their average sales price? So I should before I ask that, okay, what are the average homes selling for in the markets that you serve?
So the median sales price of New Hampshire just went up to 509, but last year our average sales price was 300. And so
So it
we
went
were
up by
like,
$200,000 in a year?
correct. Well, no, our personal,
Oh,
like
your
our
team.
team was doing, so last year it was like 500 was the state. And I say state because New Hampshire's 1.5 million people across the state. And so we do geographically hit a pretty big
Everywhere.
area.
Okay.
But across the state, it was 500 and we were at 300. I think it was 300. It was low. And so we were
So
like,
you were way under the average.
correct, because we had all this land and we just weren't focusing on volume. We were focusing on units. And so then this year, we got very clear on how we were going to coach agents on every week going over their pipeline of who are your high priority people, what's the price point, what's your net GCI this month, next month, going out. And they started to get clear about their what they were taking home, where last year it was very much coaching to units and not even getting into what their net take home was. And so we had this aha of like, we want to create a business. And I say we, this is our leadership team. We want to create a business where people are truly being leveraged and amplified when they join us. And that people aren't working just to work. They need to make money. So we have to focus on their net income in order for them to see how their work is coming to actually affect their bottom line, their dreams, and their home life. So we just changed the way we were coaching from units and productivity to what are you actually earning 30 days from now, 60 days from now.
So what are some of those specific things that they can do? Like you're coaching them to do what? Like what can they do to actually get to those higher levels?
So I think one was just tracking it. So having a pipeline tool where they have the name of the client, the price point, and where they want to buy or sell in the next 12 months. And so
I think that's genius because like sometimes like we all have the idea in our head of like who we're working with right now and who's out there, but oftentimes you're not looking at all of that in a spreadsheet. And if you saw that all of the price points you have right now are A, really far away, and B, really low price points, you start to then say like, okay, what do I need to do differently? Where did these come from? And how can I spend my time to go after something else?
correct. And so the other kind of conversation was in our market, it's really hard to be a buyer under $400,000. So it was like if you're going to collect 20 buyers in this price point, you need to get really clear on how much time you're spending because the inventory is just not there for them. So you have to have fiercer conversations with them about expectations and make sure that you have some way of communicating that's not taking up all your time. Where before it was like, I'm so busy, I'm going after units. And now it's like very thoughtful and intentional of how time is being spent with signed clients.
I love that. I think in this market, like I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, our average price point in most of our markets has gone from like 360 last year to 415 this year, which is a huge change because the incomes haven't gone up. So when we talk to our customers, it has to be a conversation of listen, if every day you want us to show you houses that just hit the market that we believe are underpriced and are going to sell for 50 to 100 grand above, we're not going to bother.
Right.
If you are willing, though, to look at a property that's been in the market for 10 days with an open mind, and we will tell you what needs to be changed to make this your dream house, and we're going to connect you with the contractors, we're going to tee you up for success. If you're willing to do that, we'd love to take you on as a client.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you can negotiate all kinds of things like your commission and all that. But when you're just an average agent who's taking orders from a client and saying, hey, this property just hit Zillow today, let's go run and drop everything and see it, like that's kind of a crappy business to be in. And I don't want to say it ruins your life, but you're also not of a value. Like I don't need a realtor to find me a house that came out and then show me that house. Like I want a realtor to guide me and tell me what to do. You're the expert.
You just reminded me of the other thing we got very clear on was prior to this commission lawsuit stuff, we do so many fiduciary services for our clients that are just effortless and baked into how we operate that we weren't even conscious of the fact that this was such a value add for our client. So we went through with buyers and sellers and we're like, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And we have a whole list and how we then put it into our new buyer and seller guides. And so then that also gave the confidence to the agents to be like, yeah, I deserve to get paid X, Y, and Z because I do this, 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 and this, and these are my results. And we didn't have that last year. We were just kind of just operating of like, this is just how we show up. And now it's like, we show up like this because we offer you all this value.
Yeah. Well, it's so crazy. Like there's a presentation that I do where I have agents write down all the things that agents in their office do for their clients, and then I have them write down, well, what makes you different? Like, why should I work with you, Ryan, over the other agent at your KW office? Like, why are you different?
Right.
And doing that exercise kind of forces you to figure out, well, why am I more valuable? And if you can't write anything down, maybe you should get out of the business. But most people have something that they can say. They're like, I have a colleague and he owns 300 investment properties. Like, there is no other agent out there that an investor should work with other than this guy because he has more experience.
Right.
He knows his stuff. He makes money on every deal. So he's the perfect fit for those clients. And I have someone else who is like the mom realtor. She has 4 of her own kids. She does $60 to $70 million in production, and she's one of the highest earning working moms in the area, makes more than neurosurgeons. Like, she's the person for that group of people.
Right.
And I think every agent needs to be able to do this exercise and figure out what extra value am I providing? Like, why am I here? Like, what value am I creating in the market? You have to write it down, though, because if you don't write it down, you get into a nice conversation with the buyer or seller and you forget to mention a couple of those things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I love that. So you did all these things and you're kind of now molding your business to fit your lifestyle. And I think what you said to me earlier was that you spend 6 months out of the year surfing. Yeah. And I have to say that sounds awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to spend 6 months out of the year doing their hobby, especially when New Hampshire and Michigan can be so cold? How do you build a business in real estate around that, like, fits that goal and that lifestyle?
It started with, how do I build a business that doesn't revolve around me? Originally, my org chart, which we called just like a big muddy puddle, was like me and all these people that were direct reporting to me. And I just had this, I read the book Who Not How, and it became my mantra of like, who do I need in my world to do, to get to this place where this thing is not about me? And it came into finding the leadership and pouring into those people who are on the ground here in New Hampshire that run the day-to-day in person. We do a lot on Zoom, but it was finding that leadership and then pouring into them, growing them as leaders, making sure they're, living a life by design in their own way. And they lead the business. Like Alicia, my director of sales, she leads the ops team. Like, I am no longer part of the ops team. I used to be, because I got into the business assisting my husband, who's now a coach. He's been out of the team for, I don't know, since 2015 or something. But anyway, I got in because he dragged me in and I assisted him on admin. So then I had this ego that I was like the admin and the super realtor, which made it really hard up until 2019 to have great operations support, because I thought I was a great operations support. So once I empowered leadership, and our director of sales, Chris, like empowered him to be a leader, and getting them both coaches, and the coaches hold them accountable, then it was like, I don't actually, and I don't transact that much. So like, I need to build something that just doesn't revolve around me. And I've done that over for the last 4 years.
Well, I think that's the big differentiator of having a real estate business and being just a real estate agent, right? Because I think so many people don't have businesses that are functioning like a business, where they don't have any numbers, they don't have metrics, or it's just them. Like, if most agents died today, the business would die with them and someone else would just take it. But I know, like, with your team, we hope that, a shark doesn't take you out surfing. But like, if it did, your team could still function. It could be sold, etc. I mean, there's some true value there. But I love that you invested in ops, because if ops goes well, that is such a magnet to then recruit other agents and other like-minded people. If you don't have that one part of it down, it's hard to get off the ground. And I know a lot of realtors, they hire a buyer's agent first, because they think like, that's going to help me buy back some time. And I personally find that to be a mistake. Like, I always hire your first admin, hire your second admin, and then maybe hire someone to manage those 2 admins. That's even better than the first 2.
Correct.
But like, when you just hire agent, everyone's doing their own thing. It's not a cohesive experience. You're also not giving any value to those agents, and eventually they just leave. When you invest really heavy into ops and you truly have the best ops in your area, those agents stay with you for longer because they don't know how to do the opposite of it.
Right. It's true. And like when you look at our Google reviews, it's very rarely just the agent. It's also naming somebody on the ops team, or the whole ops team in whole is part of the reason why their experience was so great. And I think we really pride ourselves on that, because the ops team handles so much of what's happening on the operation side. We just want our agents to be in relationship with people and practice their skills, negotiate, and go on appointments. And the ops are handling everything else behind the scenes.
Right. Like, you need salespeople focusing on green time. Like, are they making calls? Are they meeting clients? Are they kissing babies? I guess would be
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
being out there in the community. And then you want someone who has hundreds of hours experience on the paperwork, doing the paperwork.
Correct.
I know you mentioned, so about 60% of your business, you said, comes from your sphere of influence, but you had a really interesting strategic partner who you spotted this opportunity in a listing client, and you were able to pivot, and instead of just telling them like, hey, buy a house for me, hey, sell a house with me, like most realtors would do, you applied some really interesting critical thinking, and it is now one of your biggest referral sources. So I want you to chat about that with whatever you're willing to say.
So actually, she was an orphan buyer. So we were on the listing side, and her agent was terrible, and he actually like made up a bad closing date, and all these things went wrong. And then on closing, our sellers had kind of just left, there was dog poop everywhere. They knocked over an electrical box. Yeah. So we're trying to like sort all this stuff out, and I actually noticed that she was a first-time home buyer, and her agent was just out to lunch, and I was like, do you want a photo of yourself like in front of your new house? And so I snapped a photo, I tagged her on Instagram, and then a couple weeks later, she messaged me just saying like, hey, I have this new role. I'm the recruiter for this big, one of the biggest employers in our area. Would you be interested in doing community tours? Maybe that would lead to a client. So what I realized over time was like, we need to keep being a value to her and her process by not just taking these as possible, sales, but how can we take these community tours and be an arm of their recruiting and making sure that this person really wants to live in our community. Moving to Concord, New Hampshire, it's 45,000 people. It's very small town feeling. It gets rural really quick. So like you have one theater, one bookstore, one place to go watch live music, a couple bars. So it's not like a place that's super vibrant all the time. So you need to make sure that whoever is coming in understands that and wants to be part of this community. So we took that as this is a very important position, and we now go on these tours as data collecting and really showing them what they want to see in the community and then reporting back. And previously, agents that were in this role, we're just trying to sell these people higher price listings because they have higher positions of pay. So, and we were just like, we're not going to do that. We want to be of value to the recruiter.
I love that. I mean, so you took someone and instead of just like most realtors who would have said like, hey, we'll show houses to people when you send us leads. It's like, hey, send us lots of leads. You guys were able to come up with a unique value proposition and give them something that really no other realtors were offering to that level. Mm-hmm. And I think like recruiters, and I've been saying this for years because my wife works in human resources, but like these can be some of your highest paying referral partners if you come up with a strategy that adds value to them. Like, how can you make their job easier and also like continue to add more and more services that you're offering them, like how you report back to them, that would make it impossible for another realtor to come in and do a better job.
Right.
But I think the most important thing, the lesson for like everyone listening is like every single person in your database does something professionally or is tied into some network. And if you haven't done a critical thinking exercise to really think of like, how could I offer this person more value? You're missing the boat.
Right.
And like a 5-minute exercise per client, I think really solves that issue. But I know that you don't just rely on this recruiter. I know you don't just rely on your sphere of influence. Like, you're pretty active with them. So walk me through what your clients, like how you touch them, like how you get with them on a weekly, monthly basis to ensure that they continue to use you.
We have a minimum of 72 touches that go out a year. So that's 2 video newsletters. That's one just like kind of lead gen newsletter. We do minimum of 2 giveaways a year, and each giveaway has a whole plan of text, call, email, social media. So each of those plans could have anywhere from 15 to 20 touches. We do a client event, so there's touches all on the front end of the client event, and then on the back end, we usually hire a professional photographer for those as well, so then we can get those photos out at the end. We also, the other kind of thing, I was trying to think, what is our other big touch? I mean, that's a lot of touches. And then in our
Well, I think one of the big things of what you just said there was like, and I really liked like the value in doing the events and the value in doing the giveaways isn't like to do the giveaway just for the sake of it. The value is in you now have a reason to call, text, and email them multiple times before, during, and after.
Yeah.
And it's like when a realtor is told to call their sphere of influence, usually the reason they don't do it, in my experience, is that they just don't know what to say. Right? So you go to Bold, you go to whatever internal training your company offers, they tell you to make your calls, and then you do, but it's like, hey, it's your realtor. If you ever want to buy or sell a real estate, I'm here for you. That sucks. Like, that's not good.
Right.
But if you have like, hey, like I'm doing this thing for all my clients, we have this big family event coming up, would love to have you there. And then like the day before, a reminder of it. And then afterwards, a gratitude, thank you for coming. And all of those things are a reason to get on the phone with them. And then you can ask them lots of questions about what's going on in their life. And there's so much value to be had there. But like when you started and said, hey, we touch everyone 72 times, I assume everyone listening was like about to tune out because no one has time to touch people 72 times.
Yeah.
Or to come up with 72 marketing touches. But you then said, well, I have 2 giveaways and I call, text, and email. So that's like four or 5 touches for each giveaway. And you have a couple events and that's 4 or 5 touches before and after for each event. All of a sudden, we're getting a lot closer to that 72 number. And I think we understand what you're doing to touch your clients, which I love. But also that you have it organized and you actually have a plan. And I think that's really the biggest thing.
It's true. I was just pulling up my numbers. So we got, and it took us 3 years to build out this touch system. So in 2021 was like the limited data, and that's when we started building it out with the giveaways, the events, the newsletter. We do market reports. So if you sold with us or you're thinking about selling, pretty much everybody in the database is getting a neighborhood market report. So in 2022, we did 55% of our business came from SOI, 37% from online, and 8% from open house. But then last year, we bumped up to 59% came from SOI, and that's directly tied to our intentionality around the database and building out all of those touches.
I absolutely love that. So what's next? Like you've really structured the business in a way that like allows you guys to travel, allows you guys to not be the linchpin in your business. But what do you see coming? Is the market's always changing? What is next for your team?
Next for our team is, we have a very short-term goal of 12 agents, and we want 10 out of 12 agents netting a minimum of $100,000. And net, I say net because that's after all your expenses, all your taxes, and in New Hampshire, that's actually a really good net take home. So we're always asking this question, like, how can we build a business that allows somebody to plug in and net that and be leveraged and have dinner time with their kids and Saturdays and Sundays off and 4 vacations a year. So I guess what's next is like, that's what we're trying to do, is answering that question and attracting and building an organization that's possible.
I love that. If someone listening is a realtor somewhere else and has a client moving to New Hampshire, how would they get a hold of you or your team?
Oh, they can go to our website, so hvizdateam.com. And that's a silent H, which is a little confusing, but HVIZDA team.com. They can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. They could reach out to me directly, Ryan@hvizdateam.com, or you could just call 603-557-6661.
Well, and I also know that you guys have an awesome YouTube channel where you have tons of information about moving to New Hampshire and a lot of the different cities there, as well as some great social media reels that explain like many of like what people should be thinking about if they're buying a house, especially in your area. So no shortage of guides there.
We also have VizdaTraining.com, which is all towards realtors. So it's a lot of value adds. There's a whole resource tab of different things that we offer out for free based on our coaching and training as well.
I love that. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. And everyone listening, make sure to leave a review for the podcast. That's how we grow and attract amazing agents like Ryan to guest on our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.